Okay, our guest today is someone who is incredible, who we actually met through Dave Keystone, who is the ultimate connector. Ciro Muiruri. Did I get it right?
Yeah, I'll go with that.
Muiruri.
Yeah.
I think I said it right before the cameras went on. But anyways, we're so incredibly happy to have you here.
Thanks for having me.
We just saw Ciro speak at a Shelter Movers event a couple weeks ago, and we were so moved by your story. And we both said right away, we're like, we need to have her on the podcast.
For having me.
It's one of those stories that just like when you hear, we were there to raise awareness for shelter movers at, this event to kind of just educate people. I think one of the biggest things was that with your story it was such a beautiful, personal, anecdotal relation to what the thing was, but it was to get these women involved. And I think the whole crazy part is people don't even know where to start. People don't even know that this organization exists, that people so it was just so nice to have that information be out there.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And then I always think like the best format for something like that to share real like insight. Whenever we share something on the podcast, it's like, yes, it's something to talk about it, but that's why we bring on an expert or we bring on someone like this to like understand it more. You know what I mean? And it was just like so cool to understand your story and hear everything. Like a lot of us had read the article in Toronto Life, and it's one thing to read it and then another thing to be introduced to and hear the whole story. But it was just like one of those like aha moments where just like, this now makes sense. This is now, I find for a lot of people with donations and with charities and with volunteering their time, there needs to be meaning. There needs to be a why. There needs to be
context.
There needs to be context. And I just think you did that so beautifully that night. It was
a lot of tears.
And just you warmed a lot of hearts and you also opened a lot of people's eyes. And we were just like, yeah, this needs to be like whatever we can do then to share the story to our community was just like, let's go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, So I think a good place to start to give people context is background into your life.
Yeah.
And I think the biggest reason too, we also wanted to have you on was because your story is really one of resilience. Like the things that you have been through and experienced and to see where you've come out of and on the other side of things is remarkable.
Right now, if you guys are listening to this episode and you guys are like, should I work out today? Should I do this? Like, honestly, listen up because this will be the most motivational shit you'll ever hear.
We'll put things into perspective. It really will. So, I mean, and you can speak to it, but you basically how you were raised and your relationships and how you came here. Why don't you give us sort of like a little bit of a Cole's notes for our listeners of what you've been through?
Yeah, and maybe to begin with, I can mention that I feel like Toronto Life magazine sharing my story and giving me a platform to share my story has really made me feel confident about sharing it, because I remember when my story was first published on Toronto Life magazine and they called and said, okay, Ciro, we've published the story. I was like, oh my God.
It's game time.
That was a bad idea. What was I thinking? Sharing my story with the entire world. The first reaction was like, I'm never, ever, ever leaving this house again, ever. I don't want to face the world. But then slowly people responded very positively, like, thank you, Ciro, for sharing your story. So the messages of encouragement, and I was like, wow, there's an audience out there that needs to know, to hear this and how I went from point A to where I am right now.
Right.
So I've been in Canada for like 7.5 years, going on 8. And I was born and raised in Kenya. So I was born in Nairobi. Nairobi is the capital city of Kenya. And I was born in one of the largest slums. It's called Kawangware slums. And my parents died of HIV/AIDS. And there's a lot of stigma that comes with that.
What age was that also? Just so we have some context here.
Yeah. So my mom, I was like 12, I think.
Okay.
And my dad, I was a teenager. So
And it was common, like for parents to just like in that region? No, it wasn't.
No.
Okay.
No, I mean, there was a pandemic.
Right.
Like there was an AIDS pandemic. Being a slum girl child is not a walk in the park. You know, you have people who know you're vulnerable. You know, your parents are dead. You're broke. You know, you have nothing. You can barely afford anything to eat. You lack so many basic things. in the slum, right?
Yeah.
So there's a lot of vultures, especially for teenage girls. There's a lot of teenage pregnancy, a lot of drugs and gang violence.
Yeah.
And I've lost so many friends, like people I went to school with who've either joined the gang violence
Yeah.
and died, drug abuse and
Just in the wrong cycle
so the
of
thing with the slum is it's a vicious cycle.
yeah.
So my entire generation, my dad's entire generation is from the slum. From my great-great-grandmother to my grandmother to my father to my
All in the slums.
all in the slum. Because what happens is
It's generational.
it
Makes
swallows
sense.
you. The slum, you're born in the slum, you're raised in the slum, you meet a dude in the slum and you get married and you have kids and the cycle,
repeats
because you
itself.
don't know, your mind is not opened to the entire world. But because of the way the slum works, you think there's them and there's me. Like them is the people who are out there, who are driving cars, who live in nice houses. And for you, you're so far removed from
it
that.
that's not even your
It's like you can never even think about it. But my dad was a waiter. He waited tables in like some of the big hotels in Nairobi. So he planted this idea in our head. He's like, you, my daughters, are going to, because my mom died first and then left us with our dad.
Aye.
You are going to be the first ones to break this generational curse, he calls it. This generational curse. So what he did is he had been exposed to that life.
Yeah.
Seeing wealthy people coming
hotel,
to these
yeah,
hotels,
that- I mean, there's-
Intercontinental
Yeah.
Hotel, for example, and he was
Right.
so proud of waiting tables there. And so he's like, you are going to leave this slum. And so what he did is he saved up money and bought a tiny piece of land. Like at the time, it was in the middle of nowhere, in a rural place. And he said, I've bought a piece of land and you're going to leave this slum and go and live on that land. And my sister and I were like, he's crazy. Like, how are we going to go and just live in a piece of land somewhere in the middle of nowhere?
Yeah, like that makes no sense.
Yeah, so that's the one thing he planted in our minds. It's possible to live in the slum and you will leave the slum, and promise me you're going to leave the slum.
I'm just curious, like your attitude, because this was, I think, one of the things that struck everyone at that speaking event was like, you have a very positive attitude. And I'm just curious, like when you were a kid in the slums, in your situation, your mom had passed away, like, were you always kind of like had this positive attitude of, we're going to do this? Or you did?
Yeah, actually, the funny thing is that I didn't know we were poor. That's the funny thing. I didn't know we were
you just
poor.
knew it was your life.
Yeah, I was like, oh, my grandmother is there, my aunties,
Right,
my
that's
That
why
was
I mean,
surrounded by family,
that's
and
what I
you
mean
had a
about
happy,
exposure.
and you had a happy childhood.
Yeah, so I had an amazing childhood.
Mm-hmm.
And it's other people who thought we were poor. I didn't think we were poor.
Right.
If we didn't have food, that's how it was. So
Right.
I didn't have that like resentment of, people out there have it and we don't. I knew nothing outside of that
Right.
environment.
So it was your comfort zone.
Yeah. So I was like, this is what we have. So that attitude of you have to go. First, I'm the firstborn,
Yeah.
which meant that I had the responsibility of taking care of my mom, taking care of my dad when he became bedridden, including my mom. So I took care of both my parents. And so that having that responsibility from a very young age and planning meals, like I remember a time when we would only have like $1 for the whole day. Like $1, you have to plan breakfast, lunch, and dinner. So I had to be very creative. And I think that's where my entrepreneurial skills started. Like I have to plan the meals using that $1.
Give it to me.
That would blow Instagram's mind. Planning a
Shiro
full
did-
meal
what Shiro
on
did
$1 a day.
with an onion.
Good luck, folks.
So it started from when I was a child, being very responsible in terms of having to take care of my parents, having to take care of my sister who is younger than me, and then my dad, and having that, because I was the firstborn. Like if my parents are, they're sick, like my dad was so sick before
You were
passed.
next in line.
Yeah, no, not even next in line. Like I'm the one who is like the head of the family.
Right.
Yeah, and I can't sit and wait. And there was never that idea of someone is coming to save us.
You were like, I know I am the one responsible for me, and that's it.
And that has been my driving force to this day. So the idea of getting out of the slum was actually planted by my dad. And I remember he told us education will be your ticket out of this slum. And what he would do, he would go to, and it's important the things we do for our kids and the things, the small things we do with our kids and we don't think it impacts them for life. I can tell you it does. I remember the first time my dad went to deposit money in the bank. He was like, I'm saving for your, because education is not free in Kenya. I'm saving for your high school education is not free in Kenya. I'm saving for your high school education. So he went, he had, he would earn tips and he had 2 accounts, one for education, one for the small piece of land that he eventually bought. So he went and came to school and picked me up from school. I remember I was 7 years old. He took me to Barclays Bank. Like I can see like it happened yesterday. I felt so small in these huge bank halls. And he took me to the counter and he told me, Ciro, I'm depositing money for your education. We gave the money to the cashier and then we got the bank slip. And I slept with that bank slip under my pillow. This is money for my high school. For me, it was like the $5 he had deposited will pay for my entire education. So that idea of education is going to get you out of the slum and you have to leave the slum because I have bought you guys a piece of land. So all my life, I knew there was something beyond the slum. It just wasn't that reachable for me at the time.
Yeah.
But I could visualize it and I could see it and I could see it clearly, but I wasn't sure how it was going to play out.
Right.
Yeah. So when my dad died, so that meant we were left orphans. And because of the stigma, there was a lot of pushing around, who's going to take care of us? Some relatives are also think that we're a burden. No one wants to take care of us, but somehow we survived. We made it out. And when I was 19 years old, going on 20, a friend of a friend was living in this beautiful, like the most beautiful rental apartment buildings I have ever seen in my life at the time. And I remember she said, I need someone to take care of my baby because I don't have a nanny. And so I was offered to her to go and take care of her baby for a few months. And while I was there, an opportunity came up for me to experience life outside the slum. It was the first time I was seeing a toilet that you can flush. It was the first. Oh my God! I remember walking into that toilet and seeing a seat and wondering how the hell am I supposed to use this thing? How the hell am I supposed to use it? Because I'm used to a hole on the ground, right? Like, how am I supposed to use this thing? But anyway, it was luxury for me. I remember using a hot shower.
Oh.
So when I was staying at this very beautiful apartment, an opportunity came there's a cyber cafe nearby that was looking for somebody to run the cyber cafe. And I was like, oh my God, I have never even used a computer. I don't even know this thing called internet, what it is. So I found somebody who was able to show me how to do all those. I had attended like a few classes.
Yeah.
And so I knew I could throw words during the interview because they interviewed me. The cyber cafe owner interviewed me.
You seem like a quick learner from what I gather.
I aced that interview.
Oh, wow.
Like I spoke like somebody who has worked for Microsoft for years.
Wow.
Shiro, the saying, fake it till you make it? Yeah, that literally, good for you.
Oh my God.
Gmail. My box is full.
Yeah. So while working at the cyber, my ex was living in those beautiful apartments where I had been working. But I didn't know. I met him through the cyber cafe because he was coming there to send his emails and he was new in the country. He had just come from Norway. He was employed by a Norwegian organization, but he's originally from West Africa.
Okay.
So he was like an expatriate working for this international organization. And he came every single day. And when I first met him, there was nothing.
Like, not love at first sight.
No, he was just like any other client who would come in and, so he started coming every single day and he's like, show me this. Like he would tell me to show him things which he already knew.
Yeah,
you got the feeling. You're like, all right.
I got the feeling. I'm like, this guy is speaking languages I can't understand. Some Norwegian languages and some French. He was speaking French. Like he knows. I don't know why he keeps asking me to show him. But anyway, I got tips. I got lunch. Like everybody else who would do that. But then he was very charismatic. Like there was nothing about his looks that I would say stood out. He was shorter than me. At the time, I was like, oh, I like tall, dark, handsome people. He was short, so he was not my type. He was charismatic. Like that guy can tell you the sky is pink or the sky is, I don't know, purple or green.
You fall for it. Yeah.
And you'll fall for it. Like his words, the words that came out of his mouth.
It was a skill. It's a skill.
Oh my gosh. Like, so he used his skill of charisma and
He manipulated.
yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And so that's how the relationship kind of started. And I had never had a boyfriend because one of the things that my dad made sure we believed is that men are bad. And that's honestly the only way that we made it out of that slum. Because most of my friends got married in the slum, had babies in the slum. My sister and I were the first people in our family to break that cycle.
As a male telling you men suck.
Yeah,
There you
and my
go.
dad would be like, I'm a man. I know what I'm talking about. Like he instilled that fear. So I was a virgin at the age of 21 when I met my ex. And it was something that, you know, was unheard of. Like even some of my friends didn't believe me.
Right. Yeah.
You know,
yeah.
because it's like,
It was, yeah.
you know, but I was so scared of dudes. So even my ex getting me out on a date took a long time. Yeah. So anyway, we went on a date and then honestly, so many things happened so quickly. He promised me the world. He used his money because he was very well employed and he understood that, you know, I opened up to him. You know, my parents died and this happened and this is where I'm staying. And, you know, we had started the relationship. So he saw my vulnerability in terms of, oh, you live here. And if you should have seen my room, my room was like half the size of this studio. And I had no bed. So I was sleeping on the floor on a small mattress. It was pathetic. But at the time, that was my world. And that's what I knew. And I was so proud of paying my own rent and so proud
there
of
was
having...
nothing pathetic about that. It was just, once again, it was your perspective. That's all. And he saw that. And
yes,
I don't know what the rest of the story is, but unfortunately, I feel like I know where this is going.
He saw that and, he took me to places I had never even imagined existed.
Right.
Fancy restaurants.
All these things,
Or anyway, it's your, you know, the usual, you know, fancy restaurants, expensive gifts, perfumes. I was like, what do I do with this perfume? Like, what is it for my...
I just learned how to shit on a toilet. You're giving me perfume? You're like, what?
Yeah, so, you know, movies.
Wow.
Like,
so you
lot of things for the first time.
Like the cyber cafe was your first introduction. And then you have this guy
and
showing
he
you
was
things
my
you
first-
couldn't even ever believe. Like imagine seeing like a movie when you haven't even had electricity.
Yeah, exactly.
Like you'd orgasm. You would be like, what the like
What is this?
What is this?
Yeah. And for me, it was like he was showing me a different world that I had only seen in movies, for example, or read in books, right? And then what happened was now what moved things to the next level is he offered me a job. He was new in the country. The organization was new in the country. And he said, we need somebody with the skills that you have. You know, you're Kenyan. You have the knowledge about the country. We want to start schools for deaf kids. So this is where my career in education started. And they needed somebody like me because they were going to penetrate the slums. The organization was trying to penetrate the slums. And I was the perfect fit. So I was being paid like, oh my gosh, 10 times, 4 times. I can't even remember more salary than I was being offered before. And I instantly said, hell yeah.
And
I'm
literally
gonna take the
doing
job.
something like helping kids where you came from, literally
So
going
it
back
was
to what
so
your
many
dad
things.
said.
Yeah, it was so many things. And it's like they just lined up.
Yeah.
And all the red flags that would have been there, I ignored them because look at me. I'm going back into the slum to help my
the right
full
moves.
circle.
Yeah, exactly. So so they offered me a job and they offered to take me to college.
Damn, your life dream.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. I was like,
This is it.
done.
Yeah.
Like who wouldn't, you know? They're giving me so much money as a salary. They're offering to educate me even further so I can, because I did a good job. I established the first early childhood education school for deaf kids in the entire slum.
Wow.
It had never existed. And I had no business background. I had no, project management background. I had nothing. It was like, using my street smartness to navigate the slums and to also bring people together, because I knew what people would give people hope, like education. And I was using myself as an example, like, look at me. Education helped me get out of this situation. And here I am building a school in the largest slum in Africa. It's called Kibera slum. And so that's where my career started. Went to college, did Montessori education.
Wow.
So, and then at this time...
So now how old are you? This is like 20...
So now I am 22 and I have a baby, because I gave birth to my baby Naima when I was 22. And that's when everything went downhill.
After the baby.
After the baby, like, where am I going?
Yeah.
I have a baby with this guy. He's my boss.
Right.
He controls my finances.
And you know what happened was that now everything changed. Because he would pay, obviously I'd be paid. We had other people working for us. I'd be paid, but then he would make sure I spent all the money. So he'd start saying, Ciro, I am the one who is paying rent. I'm the one who's doing this and this and this. You also have to contribute. So how can you compare my salary with your salary?
Right.
So
Then
it's that
Control started.
So the control started that way. But then at the time, I felt kind of freedom, because I would leave the house and go and interact with people in the slum and advocate for deaf kids and advocate for education. So outside the home, I was thriving. The school was such a huge success. And then after about 4 years, I decided to quit. First, we were fighting too much, fighting at home, fighting in the office. The good thing was he had a boss who was Norwegian, living in Norway, and her and I became buddies, like really good friends. So I left and I started my own private Montessori school. Started very small with about 4 kids. So I was using all the skills that I had learned. It was like the only way for me to gain some freedom is if I left this work environment. I started something on my own. So I handed over the school for the deaf in the slum. And then at that time, we had moved now outside of where we had met, the nice apartment. We moved from there, bought a piece of land, built a big, beautiful house. The violence started like immediately. I had a baby.
Once you had the baby.
Once I had the baby, it started with, it starts with a slap. Then it starts with him throwing things. And then it started with punches. And it started with me being beaten so badly, I'd have to go to hospital. Or me being beaten so badly, he would have to actually first aid me and call his doctor friends to prescribe medicine. And then he would treat me because... so that's how bad it was.
What are the laws like where you are? Like when you go to a hospital and you are covered in bruises, like in Kenya, and you say, I don't know, were you forthcoming? Were you like, yes, or did you not admit to it? That your husband was abusive?
Now, this is where the system fails women. The system, and especially the society. So the society, this is how society is set up in my background. The women, in my experience, are like second-class citizens, right? It's very, very male-dominated. And every time I would go, for example, to the police to report, they would say, go back, this is a family issue, go and gather elders and your family and solve the issue. Other times I would report.
As you're like bleeding from your eyes.
Yeah.
They're like, this is a family issue.
Yeah, this is a family issue. So it's so messed up. It's more messed up than...
Well, it's just the most corrupt.
Yeah, there's a lot of corruption. I would report. He would come, bribe the police. The case would disappear.
Right.
I would report. He would beat the shit out of me and force me to come and withdraw. And I would withdraw. I would report. He would say, I'm taking Naima away from you. Go withdraw. I would withdraw. So they say a woman leaves about 8 times before she finally left. As she leaves, I think I left about 12 times. I got put down so much by my ex that I believed it. My self-esteem was so low. I didn't think I was good enough.
After being this like such a confident, clearly leader in them.
Yeah. And then him telling me that I'm so lucky that he chose me. And he was cheating all the time and telling me, yeah, it's because you made me do it. And after every act of violence is, you made me do it. If I leave, it's let's book a plane ticket and go to vacation in Thailand or India or Greece. So there was always the honeymoon period after I come back where there's these fancy vacations, and then we're back again to the
And you're always
cycle.
probably hopeful.
Yeah.
Maybe this time it's going to
Yeah,
change.
because I genuinely loved him, you know, and we had a family and I treasured my family. And that's why many women stay in abusive relationships. It's
Yeah.
because of all you've invested so much of yourself, of your life in this
and now
relationship.
you have a responsibility,
Yeah.
and you deeply, deeply love these people that you brought
Yeah.
into the world. It's like it's really hard.
Yeah, and I had a business that was thriving.
Yeah.
I had an amazing school. I opened a new branch within 3 years. Like my school was the best early childhood education center in the entire region.
So while this is all going on in the home, you are just growing.
You
It
should
was
see
like
me in my school. I'm the proprietor of the school. I am, you know, when I'm talking to people, I look like this really well put together woman.
So it was like a facade.
Obviously, when I have bruises, I have employees, so I don't come in.
Right.
Nobody knows what's happening. But some of my neighbors kind of knew what was going on. But then again, this is a societal thing.
I was going to say, it
was
sounds like
probably
it's
acceptable.
accepted.
Yeah, it's very normal. It's so normal. So no one sees it as outside of the ordinary. It's something that happens all the time.
Right.
What was the breaking point then? Because
Yeah.
we
Yeah.
have to hear what was the. So you went back 12 times in and out.
12 times,
You're thriving in
crazy.
life. You're how old's your daughter now? How old's this?
So my daughter, before shit hit the fan, was 8 years old.
Okay.
I had just turned 30. But prior to that, I discovered my ex had another family that I had no idea. In the same country, in the same city. I just didn't know. He had an entire family. Fast forward after that to 2015. When I discovered he had another family and doing all these things for the woman, I started asking myself, where is he getting the money from? Because we were living a really lavish lifestyle based on Kenyan standards. I started doing investigation and I discovered he was stealing money from his employer, who at the time was a really good friend of mine.
Yeah,
a Norwegian
the
lady.
Norwegian guy.
And so I started gathering evidence
Yes,
and
girl.
putting it, hiding it. You know, like this is my getaway ticket from this relationship. And then I told the police I have evidence. Now
They're
this is where now
listening.
shit hit the fan. Like I was just going to disappear. And so I spoke to a friend about what was happening to me, and they invited me to Canada. And so that's how I got here. And at this point, it's somebody who called me and said, Ciro, leave now. Leave right now because they're coming to get you. And if you are fighting against the police, you're not going to win.
That's fucked up that was the first person, like in all those years, in all that time of like people knowing you're getting beaten to be like, get the fuck out.
Yeah.
That's so crazy.
Yeah.
Mm.
So that's how I ended up in Canada on a very cold December in 2015. Found myself, I first went to New Brunswick. It's winter.
Had you ever, and obviously you never experienced,
No, you should have seen my
like, what is a winter
clothes.
jacket? I just,
Anyway, it turns out New Brunswick is the worst place to be when you're a newcomer in Canada. A friend of a friend.
New Brunswick in
That's how
December.
you landed there,
Yeah.
but wow.
A friend of a friend said, go to Toronto. I came to Toronto, found myself at the shelter. I first went to Fred Victor. From Fred Victor, I went to Sojourn Refugee Shelter, which today I am a board member. But at the time I was a client. And that's how I started my life, from the shelter. And I was a mess when I got here, as you can imagine. So I got help from the Canadian Center for Victims of Torture, went through their therapy, used their psychiatrist. And I actually didn't think I was a mess. Remember, I'm still like, oh, I'm a tough girl. I got
Well,
this.
look what you just did. You literally like Van Dieseled your way out of I don't even know what the hell.
Vin Diesel, not Van Diesel.
Whatever. Holy
So at this time, I'm
shit.
still thinking I've got this. But I am so jittery. I keep looking behind me. I keep like...
Well, you're going through probably the
trauma.
most
Yeah.
PTSD.
Yeah, so I had acute PTSD, but I didn't know it.
Well,
you know?
Of course, yeah. Well,
Yeah,
you just
so-
you were just you
through the
were
motions.
literally in survival mode. When
Yeah.
people
I am
say
in
that,
survival
that
mode.
was all you had to. You left everything to be alive.
And at that time, I couldn't access any money because we had a joint account. My business was with a joint account with him. So I had no personal account. Everything was tied to him. So I came here with $40. I had $40 only.
And you had to leave your daughter.
And no, what happened was when the media took interest in my story, it put pressure on the on the justice system to do something. So the police took him to court, but they only did that to show the bosses that, oh, we are doing our job. But when the media took interest, they were going to ask him to deposit his passport, and that's how he fled. And he took Naima with her. He sent me an email and said, if you want to see Naima, you have to withdraw all the cases and go on air and say all the accusations are false. Those are the conditions of seeing my daughter. Withdraw the charges and say everything I said was a lie.
Blackmailing you.
And you don't even know if he's going to actually do that.
And I don't even know that he's going to give me my daughter, right? So I said, hell no, I'm not going to do it. But the thing is, I actually didn't think he was that. I know that he's a cruel, but I didn't even think that he was actually going to keep my daughter away up to this date. He still says that. You withdraw the cases, go on air, say everything you said is a lie, then you will see your daughter. It's been 7 years going on 8. And what I want to say is I've been able to rebuild my life. It's been a journey. I stayed at the shelter for 3 months and I went through therapy. First of all, I accepted that I needed help, which was so hard for me to accept. And I learned to love myself, and I learned my confidence started slowly coming back, and while I was at the shelter, I made a decision. That the only way for me to win is to rebuild my life again and thrive and shine, so that when Naima and I meet next time, she's going to say, Mama, you're a badass. She's going to say, Mom, you are my hero. And that's what drives me. That is what drives me today. So I lost everything. I lost my house that we built together with my ex. He sold it illegally. I lost all the money I had in my account. I literally started life with $40 here in Canada. And I met so many amazing people. And what I always say is that it's okay to ask for help. Like I would ask random people, hey, can you help me with my resume? Because I was like, I'm going to find a job and I'm moving out of this shelter. So I started networking. I started attending all job training sessions that I could get. I started asking the people at the shelter, can you help me? Which training should I go to? Who should I talk to? How do I network? How do I do this? How do I present myself in an interview? Because I had not been employed in a while because I was self-employed. I didn't even know how to be an employee, right? So it's learning all these things. And I started... once I felt prepared after attending so many job training sessions, I started now dishing out my resumes and going for interviews. And I aced. I honestly...
Of course you did.
Yeah. Sounds like since day one, you've always presented yourself very well.
I was telling a friend the other day, like, if there was a job opportunity right now to be a bank CEO and they called me for an interview, I will go to that interview. I'll ace the interview, but I may not know how to do the job.
You know what? This sounds like
doing something with you.
I was going to say, this sounds like a good side hustle is literally training people on how to interview, because so many people don't know how. We've interviewed some duds over the years.
So
it's a good skill.
It is.
A good life skill.
And it's something that I didn't know. Like, you attended my speaking engagement.
Yeah.
I didn't know I could stand in front of a crowd and speak because I thought I was ugly. Because that's when I turned 30, you know what my ex told me? You're so old now, nobody's going to ever look at you.
Okay, for those who are watching the video portion of this, if you can't see Ciro, she's literally the most beautiful person.
Thank you.
It's crazy. And remember, we said, like, the fact that at that event, because we came up to you right after and you were like, I've never done that. Like, I'm very nervous. We were like, that's crazy.
No,
that
you
have a natural spark and a natural ability to do it. And I think the other thing that was so crazy was you're like presenting this slide. You're talking about, the slums, the orphan, the abusive relationship, coming to Canada with nothing, like literally getting out of this phase. And then you're like, and now I ski Black Diamond Hills and I deep sea dive with sharks and I do this. And I'm just like, not only, and you build schools in Kenya, like not only did you get out of this situation, did you kind of, like you said, healed yourself, built up your confidence again, but you literally went on to do all this crazy shit that I feel like most people are just like, I'll get to that. Like
Yeah.
you literally, you set out to do new things and to experience new things, and you didn't let your situation, you didn't become the victim of your situation.
I think for me, it was when you face death, for me, that was life-changing. I was like, I could have died. Like, I am an attempted homicide survivor. I could have died. So how am I going to live my life now that I have a second chance? How am I going to present myself next time I meet my daughter? For me, so those are the two driving forces.
Right.
So I started hustling. I went to as many interviews as possible, got a job, moved out of the shelter. I went and rented a small one-room basement apartment in Etobicoke. And that's where I drew the school that I want to build on my father's land. I was staying in a basement. I had no furniture. I had a mattress. Like I started life again, like when I did back in the
It was
cyber
almost
days.
like a full circle moment.
Yeah, so it was a full circle moment. I had a mattress.
Yeah.
I had nowhere to put my clothes, so they were in bags. I was going to the office and nobody knew what was happening to me. I was employed in a very, very high corporate environment and nobody knew what was happening. I went and got donated clothes, like office. Like you should see me walking in the office. You wouldn't know that I have the entire world behind me that has been crumbling. But nobody knew what was happening to me in the office. And so I was like, I have this job now, but it's not my passion. My passion is education.
Right.
My passion and what I'm good at is building schools, establishing education institutions. That's what I do. That's what I love to do. I was like, I don't know how I'm going to do it, but this is my dream. I wrote it down, drew the school that I want to build. And I said, I'll save half of the money. Half of the money will go to my $500. I was paying $500 for my rent. And then I'll buy food for $500 for the entire month. And then the rest of the money will go to my dream project. And I started saving. And within a few months, I had enough money to build one room. The idea was just to build one room on my dad's land because I felt like it would be honoring him. But then the more I spoke to people, the more people were like, oh, Shiro, that's a good idea. I can donate $5. I can donate $10. I can do this. I can do that. Before I knew it, I met somebody who told me, and this was the game changer. He said, Shiro, go do a presentation. Come and pitch me, and I'll give you $5,000. I can just write you a check now, but that will be too easy. Pitch me, and then we will share that pitch with other people.
You're like, bitch, have you seen my interview skills? You're like, I can pitch anything.
You're like, also, I'm Miss fucking Cyber.
yeah.
If you don't think I know,
You're like, I
Shiro,
got
the cyber
this.
girl.
Yeah.
I'm gonna put together the
I had never pitched anyone. I didn't even know. First, I was confused. I was like, is it a proposal he wants? I don't want to show him that I have no idea what he's
You're
asking.
like Googling what is a
Yeah,
business
I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, I'll put those slides together and let me know when you're available and I'll come and, we'll talk about it. Thank you, Google. I went and Googled how to do a presentation, how to do slides, how to blah, 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 blah. And honestly, one night, I had it, went to his office, pitched him, I had $5,000. And that for me was like, oh my God, I am going to build my dream school. So I started networking, talking to people. I sent that email to everybody I knew. And then more people cheered me on. And by September of 2019, I had built 4 rooms. I invited people I haven't told you guys, at this time I've already met my partner. Okay. I'm quick, by the way, guys.
Right.
I was at the cyber. Somebody said, Shiro, the only way to know Canada is go on dates with Canadians and go out on dates and drinks and stuff like that.
Yes,
anyway, that's how I met my partner, and we're still together up until now.
So nice.
And you have a 2-year-old.
And I have a 2-year-old, and sorry, we're all over the place, but I called people, told them I now have 4 classrooms. Everybody said, let's do an event and tell everybody about it. We put together a quick event. People came, they donated. They said, go Shiro, register a non-profit. I was like, that's a good idea. I registered a non-profit. Somebody said, oh, Shiro, if you had a charity, I could donate even 10,000. I was like, what? You mean a non-profit is not a charity? It's like, yeah, charities give you tax receipts. Mm-hmm. I was like, I'm going to go and Google this charity thing. Went, Google, oh yeah, there's a difference between nonprofit and charity. I was like, I'm going to register as a charity. Went on Google, read a bunch of documents on how to do this, applied for the first time, got rejected. I was like, oh, I know rejection. Gonna try again.
Like, this doesn't sit well with me.
This doesn't sit well
Like, I'm
with
just going
me.
to keep trying until I get this.
Yeah. So I went and applied again, and they were like, we are pleased to tell you that you are a now registered charity. You can give tax receipts. You can accept donations. And for me, that has been a game changer.
Right.
So I started seeing my dream really come true. And what inspires me to build schools, and we have a school right now in Kenya. We have 150 kids. We have 9 classrooms. I have
Wow.
17 employees. I have about 6 volunteers here in Canada. But what inspires me is to be an inspiration to kids and to women who are trying to rebuild their lives. I want to be that example of the kids in the slum and the kids who are AIDS orphans like me to look at me and say, oh my God, she did it. She made it. She made it out. Because sometimes when you tell someone it's possible, you can do it, they don't see it. But if you show them, then they can visualize it. And especially people who have kids in my school, they know me. They know my story. They're like, oh my God. So they tell their kids, and this is what I love. They tell their kids, you have to break the cycle of poverty in our family. You say Ciro did it. So that it's so yeah. So
it's inspirational. It really is. Yeah.
So first, the parents are involved now with their kids' schooling because I tell them you have to be involved as a parent. So I keep telling my dad's story because honestly, if it wasn't for my dad, I think I would still be in the slum.
Well, I was just going to say to you, because a lot of people listening, a lot of people are, not a lot of people are going to be coming from such
an extreme,
insane, beautiful, moving, like I can't even with this story, but for people that need whatever their mission is, get out of an abusive relationship, do something different for themselves, find their happiness or their purpose to keep them moving and keep them, like your dad's message to you, you had a very clear purpose of what you knew you needed to do. And it wasn't complicated. It was just leave. You knew. And,
but it was as simple as that. Leave the slum.
So if you could say to anyone in these tough situations right now, because you are kind of like the spokesperson for, fuck man, anything's possible. Like you know, so like anything is possible. So if you are determined, like what is your, like, what could you say? What would you think you would want to say to someone that's like, you know what, this is really inspiring. I'm listening to this right now. I'm in an abusive relationship, but I can't leave.
Honestly, no one is going to save you. That's the first thing you need to be very, very clear about, is that no one is coming to save you. And that for me, knowing that, and I know it's a tough thing to say, and, our brains like to protect us. Our brains are there to protect us. And for me to say to somebody who is hurting right now that no one is coming to save you is tough love. You are your own savior. Whether you choose to remain an ash or rise up like a phoenix is up to you, because nobody's coming to get you. So let's be clear on that. And number 2, the wild is your oyster. It takes a split second to just make that decision. I'm going to get out and just do it. It's feeling the fear and doing it anyway. There's been so many moments. I'll tell you an example. I was staying in the shelter, my $500 shelter. I got introduced to snowboarding by my partner. And I was like, oh man, a snowboard costs $700 and my rent is $500. What the hell?
Oh God, there you go. That's a financial.
First of all, I was like, what is this snowboarding thing?
You're like, can I sleep on my snowboard? I'll just bring my pillow.
First of all, it was a basement apartment. Taking the snowboard down this basement is a whole hectic thing. But I did it because I was very clear on the things that I want, and I made decisions. I was like,
okay, so that's what in that example. So coming here, overcoming all this, you really knew that when you were here, you wanted a happy life for yourself.
I wanted a happy life for myself, and you don't have to have the clear picture.
Okay.
So imagine it's in the middle of the night and you're driving in a very dark street and you have your headlights on and the only thing you can see is a few meters ahead of you, but you really need to get home to your child or to your family. Do you stop and say, oh, I can't see my home from here, so I won't drive. It's dark. I can only see 6 feet. You keep driving because the light is showing you 6 feet ahead. You keep driving. You don't stop and say, I can't see the rest of the way home from here, so I won't go. So that's all you have to do. And I really have that in my mind every time I'm about to make a decision and I can't see the way to get there. So I have a vision in my head. This is what I want to do. I don't know how to get there, but I can see the next 6 feet that will get me there. It's taking the fast stairs. And it's such a cliche because we are always told, take the first step, and to climb the stairs, you have to begin with the first step. But it's such a cliche, but it works. And that's what has worked for me, is knowing where I'm going without actually knowing how am I going to get there.
The goal is to spread awareness about this, help educate people about this, combat this obviously huge problem that exists in your home country and all over the world, right? Be a role model, a spokesperson, a leader in this space to help and show people that anything is possible.
Yeah, and that's what I'm doing, you know, like,
and your daughter, and to show your daughter that you are that version.
Yeah, exactly. Because I want next time she meets me, she's like, oh my gosh, mama, you did this and you did that and you came out from the other end.
If I'm sure if she met you at any way along this journey, she would say the same thing to you, because look what you've overcome.
Yeah, and not forgetting. Not forgetting the things that you love. Like I didn't even know I was an adventurous person. I remember the first time I was introduced to snowboarding, I was like, why? Why would anyone invent this sport? What's the fun on it?
Snow.
Yeah, I'm like, snow.
Cold, and I have to be like agile and balanced. And
yeah, but I took up snowboarding. So I've been snowboarding for the last 7 years. I compete club level at the,
just the cutest.
And I have it's so funny. The first time I did a club championship, all the other ladies in my category freaked out and didn't show up to compete. Okay?
Easy win.
You should have seen me. I was a pain to watch because I slip. If you're a snowboarder, you know, but I slip slided down the hill. I didn't make a single turn. But because nobody showed up.
You came first.
I came first.
You won by default.
Not only did I come first, I had my name on the champions board. And it didn't say she didn't compete with anyone.
No, it
just said number one.
It just said number one. And that also shows you that in life, sometimes all you have to do is show up. Just show up, you know? And so that was the first time I competed with nobody. But I've been competing with other people. You know, I have won second place, third place, you know, at the club. And I am so proud of being a snowboarder. And then I took up swimming because I never had an opportunity of learning how to swim.
Well, and she's also a number one.
She's also Romy's swim coach.
Oh my God.
Swimming is one of those things that is so mental. You know, your mind plays trick on you. I don't know if any listener has ever tried to learn how to snowboard as an adult. It's actually a hard skill, but I did it anyway. I practiced. I would show up at swimming lessons and people would expect me to be the instructor because you don't see swimming.
Yeah, I get it. Like everyone is like
adults,
72 and
everyone's in floaties. You're like, I'm here.
It's so funny. You can see the parents on the glass.
Yeah, watching.
So I
like
walk
one of these things is out of place here.
I walk into the swimming class and I'm the only adult and people see me being instructed and they're like, oh,
what's on here?
What's going on here? So I'd be the only one.
But that's so cool. You couldn't have done it unless you have you have a great sense of self.
I was literally just going to say that. I think for so many people, it's so hard to get out of their head with things, to be like, I'm going to fail at this. How am I going to do this? I can't do this. Like my kids do it. I definitely I'm guilty of doing it. It's so hard. And I feel like you have, even after everything you've been through, and maybe because it's of everything you've been through, you're like, well, I can do it.
Attitude is everything, let me tell you. I always say that it's not what happens to you, it's how you react to it. Like I've gone through shit. I've been to hell and back. Those things happened to me. But how do I react? You know, attitude is everything, honestly. You know, somebody can be rude to you at the grocery store. How do you react?
You would have been dead. Right?
Yeah.
For example,
you would have been dead. You would not be here to tell the story if you just didn't have that ability to.
So it's all about attitude and it's all about, I'm going to do it anyway. Feeling the fear and doing it anyway. I went and did scuba diving. I had no clue what scuba diving was. I mean, I didn't know how to swim. I got handed a book. I was like, oh, okay, scuba diving. Okay, I did. We went to Belize. And I was just reading. I was like, okay. This sounds very complicated, but I think I'm going to do it. There's something about, when you're down there, there's pressure, there's blah, 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 blah. I'm like, okay, it doesn't really matter. So I went to Belize. I read the entire book while we were on a 10-day vacation. I went to the scuba diving instructor and he's like, so you've done this before and this is a refresher? I'm like, nope, just learned how to swim. He's like, are you crazy? I'm like, I am. Only crazy people do things like this.
Wow. He's like,
so I did the exam, passed the exam, we started with 6 feet, 60, what do you call it? Anyway.
Meters.
60 meters, yeah. The first day, and then we went to 80, and then we went to, anyway, within 3 days, I had gone to the deepest that they could take me.
Whoa. Well, I'm not surprised.
I was going to say unsurprising. I just would love to try to give you something that would stump you. I feel like it wouldn't even be possible.
And then I got introduced to sailing. So I can't skip a boat on my own, but you put me on a boat, I'll be your best crew. So I crew at Lake Ontario. So we've chartered boats in places like British Virgin Islands. We've gone around Lake Ontario to different clubs at.
So cool.
Yeah. So I decided that I've been given a second chance in life, and my life is like a bus. I am going to ride it until the wheels fall off.
Yeah.
Like by the end of my life, you look at that bus and say, man, you've been well ridden. So that's
great.
my attitude. It's like this, I have got only one chance and I'm just tell me to go and we jump off the cliff. I'm like, okay, what do we need to do? What steps do we need to
You're
take?
like, give me a book.
Honestly,
give me Google and YouTube and just I'll meet you tomorrow.
Wow.
she's going to be Googling it. She's going to be Googling and
like
learning.
I need to go
Step
do
up
something.
our skill game.
I don't know, run.
And so this is
Run.
honestly everything I do. I know that there are kids watching me, all the kids who are in my school. And please follow us on Instagram.
What is it? Pendo
International.
Pendo
Projects.
International.
Yeah.
And if people do, is there still what's going on with fundraising for that?
Yeah, so Pendo right now, because there's so much demand we are exclusively focused on early childhood education.
Early childhood education.
Yes,
Okay.
so kids below the age of 6. So we have that exclusivity.
That's smart.
Yeah. And it's
Speak of the
specifically
niche.
schools in the slums.
It's schools in urban, in rural and peri-urban communities.
Okay.
So what we're doing is we've started this because this is where the land is that I got from my dad. I always say, and I think I had a call with you and I told you, you grow where you're planted. And so I found myself being planted in this land that my dad gifted me before he left. And I was like, this is where I'm going to grow. I am going to grow here because this is where I've been planted. So the idea is to start a social enterprise and do social franchising. So the next place I'm going to, the next thing we're doing, first of all, is we are on a campaign to build a new building. We have 150 kids, 9 classrooms. We have 50 kids on our waiting list. The demand is so high. We are going to build a new building because we managed to raise funds and bought another land next to my dad's
So you
land.
can make a bigger property altogether.
So we can make a bigger property.
Right.
We want to, we have everything. We have the architectural drawings. We have the permits.
Wow, how
we have
proud
the
do you
land.
feel? This is insane.
incredible.
I have a crazy campaign goal of raising $700,000
Okay.
to build the school. I don't know where it's going to come from, but I know I'm going to raise it. And I know you'll invite me here one day and I'll tell you that I raised that money and I built that school.
There you
And
go.
this is because you have to be crazy to have these kind of things. Like, honestly, I pitched to my boss once about the school and he said, Ciro, you remind me of somebody. There's something that Steve Jobs saying that only crazy people, the people who think they're crazy enough to change the world are the ones who actually do. That's me. I'm going to change the trajectory of the kids who come through the doors of Pendo School. And I'm going to do it through the school that I'm going to build. So I am on a mission to raise $700,000 to build the school. I have everything. I received the last permit we needed last week. We have the land, we have the drawings, we have everything. You know what we're waiting for? The money. And I know it's going to come. I just don't know how.
You build it.
Well, I feel like for you, Ciro,
We wish you the most.
It will. And not only is this full circle for your daughter, who, like Lanny said, would be proud, but your dad, who's probably watching.
Yeah.
Honestly.
Moral of this story, honestly, is the world is your oyster. You don't have to face death to be able to have this renewed strength to face the world. You can do it, and you can start it from wherever you are right now. Whatever you're going through right now, just know that you have it in you. You just have to dig deep. And remember, it's not about overcoming fear. It's feeling the fear and doing it anyway and growing from where you are right now.
I feel like we got to just, I'm like, I can't say anything. That's it. That
Vote.
Next, Ciro.
Next prez. Ciro, I just feel like you're going to like come across, like you're going to be introduced like Kim Kardashian and like something's like, your world's about to blow the fuck up. I just feel it. There's just like no way good things aren't coming your way after all this amazing, this energy, this positive attitude, this ability to just, I don't know.
Just move forward. I think it's the ability to keep going.
Yeah, and it doesn't matter. It can be like I quit. I was working as an admin for the last 5 years. I am a terrible admin. Honestly, my boss was so awesome. He put up with me, but I wasn't shining. It wasn't growing me. It's something that I was doing it, but it wasn't my passion, right? And so I was able to start this project that I'm now working on full time. So I created an opportunity for myself organically without even knowing. So I quit my job in April, and I'm so glad that I can now focus on this project that is now my full-time job. So it doesn't really matter where you're going, and you don't have to have all the answers. When I started the project,
just go.
The idea was to build one room. But, I did it slowly, talk to people about it. And then slowly, now we have a school that is registered by the Ministry of Education in Kenya.
From someone that started in the slum that has no formal education.
Who came to Toronto with $40.
She's
building schools.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, honestly, I think this was incredible.
Thank you.
Such a powerful story and conversation. And I feel like, to Lanny's point, if we do this a year from now, will you come back regardless of meeting Kim Kardashian? Remember that? Wherever the hell you're going, Ciro.
Thank you for inviting me. I honestly would love to come back and tell you more about my journeys. Now I have discovered this voice that I didn't know I have, and I'm doing talks like how I met you guys. So I'm building my confidence. I get invited to do speeches at, I don't know, University of Toronto, speaking to medical doctors about refugee journeys, or speaking to recruiters about how to hire refugees and what to look for, and advocating for refugees, advocating for parental alienation and creating awareness. So I am using my story to show people that these journeys and these stories are important to talk about. And shame, I felt so ashamed about the things that happened to me. Like I felt so ashamed that this happened to me. And now the entire world is going to know about what happened to me. But I've overcome that. And I'm just going, and I'm just, invite me anywhere. There is a stage, and I will speak.
Incredible. Well, I mean, anyone would be so lucky to hear your story and see you in person. You're radiant, honestly, inside and out. And
thank you.
Today has been such a special day for us to talk to you and to spread this message, and just be in your presence is really, really special. So thank you
so much. Thank you for having me.
Thanks, Ciro.